Again, welcome to this monthly gathering of fluoride-free activists from all around the world. We're here to share our strength, our inspiration, our experiences, our wisdom, all of the things that we can share with each other to help support one another in our own local, regional, national campaigns from wherever fluoridation still exists, or where you're fighting it off, or people are trying to get it started in some places still. And we do this once a month. We're following the 12 steps of the book, Something in the Water, 12 Steps for Ending Water Fluoridation in Your Town, a book dedicated to local grassroots campaigns. And we've come together every month. We will continue for the rest of the year in the same way. And it is a wonderful time. It's just a great time to be together. Fluoride-free activists are some of the greatest people in the world, some of the most educated people in the world, some of the most conscientious people in the world, some of the most articulate people in the world, some of the most committed people in the world. Really, we do it. I can speak for myself. I do it because I care. I really do. I really do care about people being poisoned every day and not knowing it so often. And it breaks my heart, really, when I think about the widespread application of a neurotoxin and a general poison in our water based on such horrible scientific, quote unquote, scientific justifications for the good, supposedly for the good of all. So where the propagandists and the fluoridationists tell it's good for us, we know just the opposite. And it's a battle. It's been going on for decades, and we are some of the most committed, persistent people I know. And it's wonderful to be with you all. Every single time I meet a new person who's in this battle, I just am so gratified. And so I feel so appreciative, because in this big bad world of ours, to know that there are a relatively small handful of people who are of this high caliber in terms of character and morality, really just being good people. It's just wonderful to come together every month for that reason. And then for the next hour and a half, when we'll be together, we're gonna strengthen each other's abilities to be effective in our campaigns. The reason for being together today is really to enhance and improve your ability to campaign in your local area. My name is Clint Grease, and again, I'm very happy to be with you all again this month. So today's topic is going to be dedicated to your personal story. And I can't wait to dive into this, because it has to be, it's predictably going to be a very juicy and somewhat intense conversation, because it's so personal to us. But if you would indulge me just for a bit, I want to go ahead and review where we have come these last 8 months during Fluoride-Free Campaign's monthly teleconference, and the 7 steps that we've already covered. So I encourage you to buy the book. It's on Amazon. It's also available on another site called The Book Patch. The Book Patch, if you're not a fan of Amazon, you can get it at The Book Patch. It's a very good read. It's about 188 pages. It's full of stories from campaigners like yourselves, based on 4 years of teleconferences that I did, where we had every month interviews with doctors and dentists and lawyers and politicians and campaigners of all around the world. And really, this book distills all of that wisdom and all of that expertise into one handbook for activists. So back in January, when we did step 1, Confront the Deception, the discussion was dedicated entirely to just that, confronting the deception. We campaigners, to be successful, have to have a way of emotionally and intellectually understanding exactly what we're up against, and then also to have a way of talking about it to others in a responsible way. Step 2 is important to protect yourself, because as long as water fluoridation is still in place where you live, it's important to reduce your exposure to this neurotoxin, this chemical, and to help others do the same. And while you're on your campaign trail, you're doing better for yourself, and you're establishing yourself as an expert to others, because you know a thing or two about water filtration or where to get clean water. And so it helps when you're introducing this political subject to people, to make it personal for them and help them find a way to begin reducing their exposure to fluoride chemicals. Step 3 is when we really got into politics heavy for the first time. Fluoridation began in politics, so it must end in politics, and we all need to embrace that. So the first thing to do is to map your jurisdiction, which means to really understand the authority by which your water utility fluoridates your water, and to understand the history of it, how it came to be, any court cases, for example, that may have addressed the fluoridation topic, and the extent to which the water utility fluoridates, to what communities does the fluoridation flow, and all the things related to really just understanding your jurisdiction, the politics involved, who are the authorities involved. Then that places you in a very powerful position to take step 4, which is to choose a pathway to victory. In politics, as the chapter points out, there are several broad pathways to victory, from the ballot box to running for office, including running for office yourself, to direct lobbying of your elected officials, a lot of direct action, which is like protesting. It's a really wide variety of activities, all dedicated to drawing attention to your campaign. And of course, there's the pathway which involves the courts. So based on your jurisdiction from step 3, you are in a good position to choose which of those broad pathways to dedicate your campaign to locally. And it's different from place to place. Then we addressed in step 5, mastering the message. So this is a chapter dedicated to communication, since everything is a communication in the end. Everything you do in a campaign is some form of a communication. And so we boiled communication down to 3 basic elements: your message, the objective of your message, and your audience. And once you know those 3 things, you can increase your effectiveness tenfold. Step 6 is all about strategizing. Step 6, turning passion to action, addresses the question of what to do. And as you've all known on your campaign, everybody wants to end fluoridation. The end in mind is generally shared, that everyone understands. The end of fluoridation is the objective, but people have quite a diversity of ideas about how to achieve that. So in this chapter, we help you help yourselves by understanding some very simple, basic elements of dynamic strategizing, a way to keep your strategizing alive and fresh and relevant to what's happening in real time in your campaign, and to have everybody on the campaign understand what the strategy is. Step 7, last month, we had a really great conversation about winning the credibility war. So we had to create a chapter, obviously, in the book for the credibility war, because this topic, more so than many topics, has an element of believability. We, as advocates to end fluoridation, are up against obviously a massive set of institutions who carry with them some authority and believability. And so in order to be successful, we have to learn how to win the credibility war. And guess what? There's a lot of things you can do to really improve your credibility. And it's indeed your responsibility as a campaigner to do so. That brings us to today. Today's topic is telling your story, your personal story. This story that you have is probably your campaign's greatest weapon in your arsenal against fluoridationists. You see, when you're out there on the campaign trail, people are interested in listening to the facts and the data and the history and all the things that you want to tell them about the neurotoxicity or what it's going to take to get it out in terms of elections or direct action, all of the things related to the strategies and the objectives of your campaign, the realities of water fluoridation. But meanwhile, while they're listening to all those things, in the back of their head, they're asking themselves, who is this person? And why are they so passionate about this? Or why are they so motivated? Why are they seem so animated about this topic that I hadn't even heard about until yesterday in some cases. So what's going on over there? And I can tell you that when people have a good understanding of who you are, what motivates you, they're 10 times more willing to listen to all the things that you want to tell them about fluoridation and how to end it. So again, I thank you all for being here, because this is our time to be together and really share some wisdom and some experience together. The focus today is going to be on your story. We want to hear your stories. And if you're willing to, I want to work with you from the point of view of a coach to help you hone your stories. Storytelling is a skill set. It takes practice. There are some things that you can do that really will help your story have a stronger impact on the listener, and to really isolate the elements of your story that are most germane, that are most important to share, and try to work to keep the secondary information or the related information to the side, and really make your story land strongly with the listener. When you're effective in this way, not only will you actually, you'll find that you yourself are re-inspired by telling your own story. That's been my experience, that when I have the opportunity to retell my story, I get reinvigorated myself, because I remember what it was like for me. And then the other person gets a taste of that, and it's contagious. So they can oftentimes be inspired by your story, even though the details of your story may not match with their story at all. It's that they can relate, though, to the humanity in it. They can relate to your humanity. And because of that, it humanizes this whole topic, which I think maybe you could all agree that this topic so often can get heady, it can get intellectual. Fluoride is invisible, it's odorless, it's tasteless. So in a way, when we talk about it, it's so often abstract to people. But when we tell our stories, it humanizes it, it makes it more real for people. And when it's more real for people, people are more likely to take action. So you can see how it can help your campaign overall. So it's not just you telling your story, but everyone in your campaign. So what we learned today, I want you to share with everyone you know who's campaigning, and help them operate like a coach, as I'll be doing today, and help them, take some time to help them hone their stories, so that they, when they're out in the campaign, out in the field on the campaign, or if they're in front of an elected official, to be able to tell your personal story briefly, and oftentimes right up front, so that the person knows who they're talking to, and that way they're way more interested, it's way more real, way more human, and way more personal. I'll just go ahead and give you the 3 parts to keep it really simple. We've boiled telling your story down to 3 simple parts. The first is to talk about how it once was for you. And then the second step is to describe the moment of transformation, if you will, the moment when the light bulb went on, when there was a sudden or a somewhat isolated event that brought your attention to fluoridation's ill effects and what it meant for you, your new perspective on drinking water. And the third part is, what's it like now? What's it like today to be someone who had such a transformation? So the 3 parts work together, and eventually you'll be able to tell a story in any way you want. You can, the order in which you tell these elements isn't even critical, but that your story has these 3 elements, and that you focus on these 3 elements and avoid talking about other things. As we'll see, I'm sure as we practice today, we'll have some examples of how that looks. Let's get started. If you are someone who would like to tell your story with these, try to focus first and foremost on these 3 elements as briefly as you can. Of course, we're fluoride-free activists. We could sit around for hours, and we want to hear all the ins and outs. We'd love to have, and I can see in myself, even as I'm beginning now, that I personally have to be disciplined, just because if it were up to me, we'd hang out all day, and we'd listen to all of our stories and hear all the details, all the ins and outs. But remember, we're doing this for the sake of our campaign. So we have to keep in mind an audience as is so important. And we dealt with in the step, master the message. Whenever you're communicating, you want to have an audience in mind. So today we're thinking about somebody who doesn't really know you, who doesn't really understand fluoridation, perhaps someone on a campaign trail. Maybe it's a neighbor who you meet at a farmer's market, or maybe it is an elected elected official, and you don't even have that much time to, there's a limited amount of time you have with this elected official. So that's really the kind of context that we want to bring to this conversation. So we want to keep our stories brief, but really powerful and to the point. So again, the three elements are what it was like before, the moment of transformation, the aha moment, and what it meant for you. And then now what it's like on the other side of that transformation. Get started practicing telling your personal story in a really powerful way. Who wants to jump in and be the first one? Okay, we'll start with Anne. There exists online at the International Fluoride-Free Teleconference.org website a recording of the 100+ hours of interviews and material from that teleconference over 4 years, and you can look up the very teleconference that we did on this topic, and you can hear other people's stories, and you can hear other examples of people getting coached around their stories in similar fashion to what we're going to be doing today. So go ahead, Anne, let's get started. If you may, just go ahead and tell your story with those three elements, and if you don't mind, I'll just stick my nose in there from time to time if necessary to adjust things.
Well, I'm a real raw beginner, and so my story will be very short.
Okay.
Because I haven't had a lot of experience, and and I'm not even quite sure how I came to deliver some pamphlets into letterboxes around New Plymouth. And it was a beautiful pamphlet which was put together by Fluoride-Free New Zealand, and you probably know Kane and Mary, or of them. And so I delivered these pamphlets like a zombie. It looked nice, and I realized there was something wrong going into the water, but doing over my head. So I'm not quite sure how my light bulb moment came about, but I think it was at another meeting, and I heard people speaking about what they were doing or what wanted to do. They were outraged, and I just sat and listened for a while and thought, oh my God, what are we doing? And so I joined that little group, and we've been a little bit busy since then. We've delivered pamphlets. We've started a campaign to the council with a petition. We've probably got about 2,000, this is only in the last 3 months, 2,000 signatures. And we're just working on another, because things have changed a bit. We're now working on another set of blurbs for that. We're very dedicated. And what happened after the light bulb moment was, for me, was disgust. I felt totally sick in my stomach and disgust that people, our council, would actually do this. And I was speaking to somebody the other day about fluoride in the water and what it actually meant, and this person said to me, the council wouldn't do that to us. And I thought, yes, that's exactly how I felt too for a while, until I really realised what was going on. So then I made a trip to the mayor's office, and he gave me half an hour where he gave me all his thoughts on it. And I wasn't allowed to speak. So then I came home and wrote him a letter and told him what I would have liked to have said in the half an hour that I had with him. And of course, nothing's changed. And the only words that the councillors and the mayor and the CEO of our council tell us, we had to do it. We had to do it because the government told us we must do it. Ministry of Health are working throughout the country at the moment, indoctrinating people, if you like, brainwashing them into thinking that it must be done. So our local dentist, he was interviewed, one of the New Zealand Dental Association people, told the reporter that he had death threats against him by this group, and that's made us, I think, a little bit more determined to carry on as well. So that's where we are at, really.
Yes. Okay, very good. You have a fine story, and a perfect, fine story.
Thought.
Yeah, so I can hear very clearly what it's been like since your aha moment. And you definitely pointed to an event where your eyes were opened and you had to confront and deal with the new reality. The before time maybe wasn't as prominent in so far. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you to put in a little bit in your story to make sure people have an appreciation of what it was like for you, generally speaking, before you you went to that meeting, before you really put your attention on fluoride and realized what it was. There was, I don't know, was it your whole lifetime? Was this a recent thing? Just give us in one or two sentences, summarize what it was like. Maybe you were oblivious, maybe you had heard of it but you didn't know, or maybe someone had mentioned it to you and you thought they were crazy. Whatever authentically was your experience before.
I had nothing, nothing at all. I knew nothing. We lived on a farm, so we had our own water. So I remember thinking about the water, fluoride in the water, but it didn't apply to us. So, it went right over my head again, and completely oblivious to anything about it. I'm 80, and all my life I've thought about fluoride, and we've been told it's good for your teeth. It's really good for your teeth. But anyhow, my children didn't have it in their water, and I didn't provide them with fluoride tablets, so their teeth seems to be okay.
Okay, there, perfect. So I'm 80 years old, and for the most of my life, I lived on a farm with well water, and I had heard about fluoridation, and I understood that they said it was good for your teeth, but I never considered it that high of a priority to do anything about it. So my children's teeth seemed to be fine, and that's the way it was for so many years. And then I went to a meeting.
That's right.
See how that works? You just quickly and just give people a sense of what it's like being you, then they really get you. But then there was this event that you went to. Maybe you want to say what happened that you should be at that event in the first place. Do you remember what it was that got you intrigued or interested to go to the event? A friend invited you, or what was it?
Excuse me, I don't know whether you've heard of PHA, People's Health Alliance.
Oh.
Excuse me, it started in the UK and now it's coming to different places around the world where people take responsibility for their own health. And so I was at one of those meetings. So it's kind of worked in together quite well. This is us taking responsibility for our own health.
Oh, okay. And how long have you been participating with People's Health?
Well, this is just an organisation that has just started up in New Plymouth, in my hometown, about a year, maybe a year, not quite.
Okay, good. So about a year ago, I heard about this event organized by a group called People's Health Alliance.
PHA.
And I just went along, knowing that it was going to be something interesting about health. It turned out to be about fluoridation.
That came up, yes. That's right.
It turned out to be about fluoridation. And go ahead. So then from that, so what was the, like, almost a really great technique, folks, if you can bring this to your story, is to bring your listener to the moment, to the very place, like in a room with people. So there I was sitting in this room with X number of people. It was in the middle of the afternoon, and there was this speaker, and then, so go ahead. It's like, just bring us there.
Well, I don't remember anybody speaking about it through the evening. They must have, because these 4 or 5 people were in a group, and I knew most of them, and so I'd kind of joined in. And it was at that moment when I started to hear that this was the toxic waste that went click in my head straight away. So then
good element. So there I was at this meeting, and there was a group of people happened to be talking about fluoridation. someone, if you remember, you don't remember, it's okay. You could even put in a character if you want. So this person was saying that it was toxic waste. I had never heard that before.
Mm.
But that opened my mind to looking at fluoridation in a completely different way.
Mm.
So you really do want to go ahead and just say in your story that, however you in your words, how it really was a shift in perspective, how what you heard or learned or what happened turned you. You want to say it. I now saw fluoridation differently, or with that information, I looked at things differently. You really want to nail that moment of transformation.
It's quite clearly on the brochure. I somehow didn't pick it up then.
So maybe it was on a brochure. Maybe it was overheard conversation. Maybe it was a speaker. Everyone needs to remember that moment and then just take people there and then let them be there with. And in some cases, folks, when you first heard, someone say, for example, it's a toxic waste. That might have been the beginning of your transformation, but for a lot of us, what we did then was we went and researched it ourselves. It's also part of so many stories that we hear something and it kind of opened us up, it cracked us open for a second, but we didn't, in some cases, that's all we needed. And we were convinced, fine. Maybe the person was authoritative enough or they gave enough facts or information on the spot that was sufficient to convince you. But maybe for you or for some of you, it really was it was like over a week or maybe a month or some period of time where you went and looked for yourself. And so, like, for example, then I found the material data sheet from the chemical company, and I saw that it's true. They're putting this chemical in and they're spending it, and it comes from the phosphate mining industry. And after that, I knew that I had to do whatever I could do to end water fluoridation. Okay, so that's your transformational, that second element. What happened and how you came to have a new perspective, including I have to do something about this. And then go on to tell the third part, which is all the things, but not all of it. It's not important to be comprehensive because you still need to be brief and summarize, but summarize all the things you've been doing since. So now I go door to door handing out flyers. I've joined so-and-so organization. We're up against, people who used to think like me. I heard that part of your story, right? So just 2 or 3 or 4 elements of what it's like now to give people an understanding. Oh, okay, it makes perfect sense. You used to be like that. You had this moment of awakening. And of course, now you're doing these things. Now your actions today, this person I'm meeting who's standing right in front of me, it all makes perfect sense. Of course, she would be talking to me. Of course, that's why she's so adamant that I too learn about this. So thank you very much, Anne, for being the first one to work together. I'm going to see if some other folks want to do the same. Do you have any questions or comments about your story? All I do recommend everyone is you practice it. Just keep practicing.
I understand what you're saying. I do understand. And most people don't want to listen. They walk away.
Yeah. So you create the rapport with them. They actually start caring. Once you tell the story, and 2 or 3 sentences for each of those 3 parts, if you can get it that honed down, you don't ask too much. You know what it's like when you're with somebody who doesn't know you. You're asking them to listen to you, so you better give them some real good in the few moments that you have with them. You better give them something that will then encourage them to want to listen more, and then they have you buy a little more time with them, and then that you can, and eventually that's when you can start talking about your campaign. And as we cover in Turning Passion to Action, there's a way of communicating the campaign, what you're up to, so that other people can plug in based on where they're coming from. So the discipline here is to tell your story. Don't talk about your campaign. Tell your story, get them to know you, care about you, like you, be interested in you, and want to invest more time listening to you and hearing about the campaign. So really be conscious of when it's time. Now, okay, now I can talk about the campaign. Now I have their attention. All right. So practice that yourself as many times as you can. Get family members. Say, hey, I'm going to practice telling my story. I'm going to try to do it under 60 seconds or 90 seconds. And then also help your other campaigners do the same. Say, call up your other campaigners and just dedicate some time. Say, go ahead, tell your story, and I'll listen to you and see, I'll give you feedback about the parts that I think were the most essential and the parts that maybe you could leave out that were nice to hear, but don't really, in terms of time, if you're trying to be brief, you could probably leave those parts out so you can support others in the same way.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You're wonderful. All right, Kevin, you're up.
Right, good. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, and there was natural fluoride in the water, no serious side effects, no interest in fluoride, yay or nay. Came to New Zealand 23 years ago, and I've been involved with sort of health and health matters, and graduated as a naturopath in 2008. And so was looking at, what is toxifying people, what needs to be detoxified, whatever, which I then started chatting with homeopath Angela, who's in the room, and other groups about fluoride. Could see a conflict here between what we're told by the health profession and what is actually the truth. I went to a workshop organized by Kane, who's in the room, in Waikato, and another weekend workshop or a full day workshop in Wellington organized by Mary to do my research, which also led me to have a look at the data sheet for fluoride that was coming out of where the fluoride was coming from. Was it natural? Was it artificial? This got me really flustered that there was a conspiracy against us by the higher authorities. So I joined a group in Hawke's Bay, and we lobbied and eventually got a fountain, pure water, direct from the aquifer source in Hastings, which was great. And we're carrying on with that. My turning point with fluoride was when we had a meeting in Havelock North and invited the ministry there, and the CEO of the health board in Hawke's Bay was there with a caravan. He came with a caravan, and he went and smashed our fluoride-free billboards. His name is Mr. Snee. Some of the sort of local people will got it. It was a pity that I wasn't within range, because I have a very short fuse when something like that happens. And we tried to prosecute him, and he got off free because he's one of the untouchables. And that's where I think my real fighting turning point came. Really, my crusade started there. And we've got a good group in Hawke's Bay. We've kind of got splintered now that we've got the fresh water fountain, but it's getting to the stage with chemical plants being built, big water reservoirs being built. Oh, it's just a sustenance, just to sustain things. But those water reservoirs have got a building right next to them with all sorts of filtration equipment and additional, things to add things. So there's, the fight is still on, and this is where we just need to keep going. Physically, no big problems on my side. I can't say I've aged more than normal, although I do feel it, than normal. but yeah, it's my clients. Angela will talk about, you know, clients that she's got. So I won't take her wind away. Yep, that would be my story, and welcome for suggestions to make it more potent.
Excellent. Thank you. Wow. See, but just, you know, the good news is, folks, you can't screw this up. You know, and with practice, when you're paying attention to the person you're talking to, you know when it's working or when it's not. You know, this is I created this kind of a formula to make sure it has these three elements, because I found that really does work. But the proof is in the pudding always, and it's always individual. And every time you tell a story, it's going to be a little different, a little unique. So what you just told me was wonderful. I got, you know, I can tell you, I felt great. I mean, I felt not great because it's, you know, we're the topic, but I mean, I felt your energy. I felt your, you know, your commitment. It was contagious. I'm with you, you know? So that, I just want to give you that feedback, that the spirit of it is definitely coming across. And the other thing I find interesting in your story that maybe others are similar is that the time between when you learn that the fluoridation of our water is not good, you know, to the point where you were like ready to make it your thing. How did you put it?
Crusade.
Your crusade, exactly. So there was a little bit of a time lapse between those two. And, you know, when I was saying the second element is, you know, your aha, your break, when you realize that fluoridation is a problem and that you need to do something about it. You know, for some people that can happen like instantaneously. For other people, it's a little bit more of a protracted period where you're like, oh, this is not good for us. But then for you, the element of conspiracy, or the element of, wait a minute, this isn't just an innocent program done by do-gooders who just happen to be misinformed. This is diabolical. So that's what's interesting about your particular story. And that took place over a little period of time. What I would recommend trying is to squeeze those together, or at least, you know, make that. So I'm just going to try something out. So I'll even start with the before time. So I was, you know, as a health advocate, I was a practitioner of holistic medicine and healing, and I was familiar with a variety of topics related to health, and I was focused on discovering the various things in our environment that toxify us. And I went to an event. This is part maybe also to add is like, was there if you could, even if you have to invent it, you know, a specific moment. So I went to an event, or I picked up a book about fluoridation specifically. And I really understood that fluoridation, chemicals in our water, is one of the major constant elements in toxifying ourselves. But I didn't really get involved in the campaign right away until I understood that the fluoridation in our water is not just done innocently, that there is evidence of a conspiracy to toxify us. And I would recommend that if you can, in your story, specify something, like you read something, you saw something, the moment it landed for you, this isn't just an innocent accident or bad public policy based on, even though good intentions, you know, just, but name that thing. And then what it's like now is I'm down. I don't know how do you want to say it, but very briefly, you know, I'm committed to ending water fluoridation wherever it is in the world, if it takes the rest of my life. It is my crusade. And so I do this, and I do that.
Yep. No, I'll take that point. A couple of things that came up there that I could add is, as a health practitioner, I was speaking to other health practitioners who had done a urine fluoride tests, etc. And I'm looking at Angela. I also spoke to dentists name, John Jukes, and a couple of other dentists who were against fluoride. So that was that. The other thing that I would look at adding is don't believe anything I say. Do your own research. And here is a flyer. Here is a flyer that you can go and read stuff, and places to go and do your own research.
Okay, great. Good. Thanks so much for letting us use your story. It's great. And again, I'll just recommend to everyone to just practice it. Just try it. Maybe, make it a point to practice it 10 times with, 5 different people over the next week. And notice how your story improves and gets more impactful as you practice it. Wonderful. Yes. Yes, the chapter about winning the credibility war is relevant to this. The chapter about mastering the message is relevant to this, obviously, because we do have that credibility issue, and we do want to keep in mind who our audience is as we're speaking to them. But I don't want you to feel like you need to change your story in any way to make it less authentic. You know what I mean? Please, your story is your story, and it's priceless and it's real. So in as much as you want to keep in mind who your audience is, and as much as you want to keep in mind that we do have a credibility backlog, or we're starting from behind sometimes with credibility, that your story is still your story. And I want you to communicate it proudly, authentically. It's your story. So if you've determined that, there's a diabolical conspiracy, then you need to be able to say that. Okay. Which reminds me too, that the first chapter, confronting the deception, is also relevant then for those people who have concerns about confronting the deception, the scope and scale of this deception, and then how to orient yourself to others in terms of speaking about such a deception, such a widespread, coordinated, decades-long deception. Okay, thanks. So who wants to go next? Who wants to practice your story? These are so amazing. I promised you from the beginning it would be predictable, didn't I? Tell you that it would be, you just feel the excitement from people's stories, and I want you to notice that. And I want your campaigns to be imbued with the same energy that we're having today on this call. All right, so let's see. I think I saw Angela's hand first. So we'll do Angela, and then Janice, you'll be up next. You want to take it and go, Angela?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm in the midst of actually writing a book. And it's going to be published this week, hopefully, or sent to the publisher. And it's my story about my journey with fluoride. So years ago, I read a wonderful book about how fluoride was used to enrich uranium. And that caused, that uranium was part of the bomb that destroyed Nagasaki. So that was, for me, absolutely mind-boggling. I had no idea that fluoride was part of the Manhattan Project. And it horrified me. Horrified is the word, really. And one of the things that I remember from that book was that all the people that worked using fluoride to enrich uranium had no teeth. Out. Oh. So much for hardening your teeth, So that was a turning point for me, and I started reading and learning more, and Paul Connett was hugely part of that experience. And it was so I started going to the council and asking them not to put fluoride in the water, and returning our water to the supplier. So we did all sorts of tricks in Hawke's Bay to try and get the attention of the council. And it obviously worked, because eventually the Ministry of Health took over the fluoridation issue, and the councils put their hands up and said, well, we don't know. We're not dentists. We're not doctors. We don't know. So the story ended up that in Hawke's Bay, we had a referendum. So then those of us on the no side, no fluoride, we had to put in our own money, and I think our total budget was $6,000. The yes vote, who were the Ministry of Health, they put in well over $50,000 worth of advertising online. So everywhere you went, you saw the yes vote, yes vote, yes vote. And when the referendum finally came around, we got 30% of the people voting no and 60% of the people voting yes, of those that voted, which I think was extraordinary, given that we had such a tiny budget and they had such a huge budget. So it was very fascinating to me that during that time, that was 2013, my mother sent me my Plunkett book. So that's the book that you get when you're a baby, that has all the information about your vaccinations and your growth and all that sort of thing. And it said that when I was 5 months old, they started giving, the doctor ordered me to have fluoride tablets, because I was a rural baby. So at that time, 1961, they thought that if all the rural babies were given fluoride tablets, their teeth would be nice and strong, like the urban babies, because the urban babies were all getting fluoridated water. So my body, in its wisdom, it put all that fluoride into my pineal gland. So I didn't get fluorosis on my teeth. I didn't get scoliosis. I got an enlarged pineal gland. And that didn't start showing up until I was well into my 50s. But it had been steadily accumulating when I lived in Wellington, where it was fluoridated, when I was drinking a lot of tea, which accumulates fluoride, when I was using fluoridated toothpaste, all these sources of fluoride was just steadily accumulating. And finally, it showed up as hydrocephalus. So that's swelling of the brain. And that's because the tumor was actually blocking the drainage from my brain to my body, the spinal fluid. So I've ended up with 3 brain operations and 6 weeks of radiation. And I've got my brain back again. I lost it there for a while. I was a zombie, but it's back again. And I'm back on the campaign. Kevin's smiling over there. And it's been a huge, huge process to detoxify the fluoride that's in my system. And I don't think I've achieved it yet. I'm still working on it. But as I say, I've got my brain back. I've written a book, and I'm continuing to work on the campaign against fluoridation. So that's my story, really.
Fantastic. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. My goodness. Wow. I don't want to say some stories are better than others, but when you have such an acute toxicity from fluoridation, people are going to take notice, you know. In the book, Something in the Water, 12 Steps to Ending Fluoridation in Your Town, there's a story of a horse breeder in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Some of you might have heard of her. And her horses were poisoned, you know. That story really, really resonates with people. And your story should too. So can I help have it be more impactful?
Oh,
Just from my impressions. Okay, so one thing I would say, which is great for everyone, you want to have these three elements in your story, and as Angela sort of demonstrated, you can start with the third part first. The order isn't interest. You know, maybe when you're first starting out, you might just want to go 1, 2, 3 in order, but you'll find that there are interesting ways to tell the last part first, and then go back to the first part, and then to the second part, or maybe start with the second part. But I want to be really nailed all three parts in your story. For the point of view of the listener, there's a lot going on, and it's emotional. So you really want to help the listener, you know, really pinpoint those three elements so they are okay. That's what happened. So if I could ask, at what point in your life did you realize that fluoride is toxic, whether it's from tablets or from the water?
when I read the book about the using it to enrich uranium.
Right. And so had you had your tumor before that or after that?
No, I was drawn to it long before the tumor. I had no idea I had a tumor
Okay,
when
good.
I was drawn to fluoridation.
Very good. So maybe other people understood that chronology, but I missed it. So, so the before time. So the before time that, you know, so I was raised in the country, and at that time, fluoridation was widespread in the cities, but not in the country. So my mother accepted the advice of her doctor that I take fluoridation pills, and I did, from age blah 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 to age blah blah blah, or you could say it like that, thinking it was going to help my teeth. And then when I was so and so years old, I was reading a book, and it might also be interesting how it came to be that you're reading that book.
Yeah, Paul Connor. How did I find that out? I don't know that moment when it really started. Yeah,
So
I
Colin
really don't
recommended this book, but didn't Paul Connor of Fluoride Action Network, correct?
Yeah.
So his advocacy must have introduced to the idea that fluoridation was toxic even before he recommended the book, no?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So let's try to rewind back into your life. What was the moment when you met Fluoride Action Network?
Well, I read the case against fluoride. That was instrumental in me starting to look in all directions. Was there a moment before that? Maybe it was when Paul came for a visit to New Zealand.
So you were invited to an event.
Yeah, possibly.
Do you remember that event?
I've been to so many of them, I really can't remember which one it was, but yeah.
And Dr. Conant's been to New Zealand more than once.
Many times, yes.
Yes. So, so you may have to kind of manufacture it a little bit. If for those, you know, it's fine. You don't have to worry about the ethics of it. If your memory is a little bit fuzzy, you can imagine that, you know. But what's important for each of us, is to get to, there was a before time when we were relatively ignorant, or we for whatever, we didn't think about it, like most people. That's what's so great about the before time, is because the person you're talking to is probably like you once were, oblivious, or maybe had heard of it, but didn't know much about it, vaguely knew it had something to do with the teeth. Whatever it is, if you can encapsulate the attitude that you had, and that there really was a time, even though you were taking fluoride tablets, and so for you, Angela, I was taking fluoride tablets in my youth, and drinking fluoridated water when I moved to the big city, thinking it was helping my teeth. Simple as that, thinking it was helping my teeth. And one day, my friend called me up and said, "Hey, there's this guy from from the States who wants to talk about fluoridation in the water. And I thought, well, that's a strange topic, but I'll go along anyway. You know what I mean? So there's a kind of an innocence, if you will, like, and when you want to have people understand your thought process sufficiently so that it makes, in other words, it makes sense in the end why you are doing what you're doing, why you stand in front of them with such passion and conviction. It didn't just happen overnight. There were these really pivotal moments that brought you to where you are. So there's the before time and then what happened. So would that be a kind of story that would be accurate to say that you were invited to this event and you went along just because you were curious about the topic?
Yeah. I
So,
think
well,
deeper than that, though. I think there's also an element of not just intellectually understanding that, but intuitively understanding it. That my body knew intuitively that there was something going on and I was drawn to it. That's the way I feel about it.
okay, good. So you can say that too. So I felt intuitively drawn to this topic. And it's no surprise because later I developed a tumor in my pineal gland. That was a direct result of exposure to fluoridation chemicals in my youth and in the water that I drink. Yeah. So I want you to be able to say about the tumor. I want you to be able to say about the books you read, the impression Dr. Conant made on you, because that's all the period of the awakening, the aha. It took place over time, but like for you, wow, there's just no doubt in your mind. So the before time is all that just innocence, like it's helping my teeth, I thought. Till the day you went to that event, you read a book that was recommended, you developed a tumor, it all clicked. You could say that. That's, again, I said it earlier, but if you can include in your telling of the story just half a sentence even, or where you make that pivotal moment clear, you simply say it all clicked, or after finally I just realized this stuff is no good. So it's good to put a pin on that in your story, all of you, so that people get, okay, this is the story is moving. It's a narrative, it's a feature or a technique in telling a narrative where you signpost to people where you are in the story. So that's the moment I realized that fluoridation in the water is the worst idea ever. However you want to say it authentically to you in the moment. And then it makes it natural to go. And since then, so because of that, or ever since that day, I realized I have to do something about it. So I got involved in a campaign, or I initiated a campaign, or I just threw an event, or I just did something. And now we go door to door, we have blah, blah, blah. And be careful here, because I don't want you to seamlessly start then talking about your campaign and all the ins and outs of your campaign. I think you did that a little bit in your first telling. You told a lot about the campaigning and the ins and outs of your campaign. Kevin, you did the same. So I really want you guys to be disciplined. This is critical, that if you don't land these 3 points of your story and then end your story, like take a breath and like look over to the listener and see, did they get who you are really? And the point of your personal story is to get them trust you, like you, understand you, see you as a human and not just another person who wants them to focus on an issue in their life when there's already so many issues that we're all already, looking at so many issues. Here comes another person who wants me to focus on another issue that's of something that's really important and urgent. And I have to, another one of these things, I don't want to, so you have to recognize that there's already a resistance out there, but your personal story has the power of breaking through all of that. So tell your personal story. Don't talk about the campaign too much. Just give people a sense of who you are, that you're campaigning at all. Do you know what I mean? Just enough flavor to get that you're a campaigner. You're in it to win it. but don't talk about the campaign itself yet. You will, if you're successful in your story, that will be the very next thing you talk about. But take a breath and in your own mind say, okay, I'm not going to talk about the campaign and all of the strategizing we're doing and how indeed I'm hopefully going to enroll this person in participating in our campaign. That's all going to happen. You have an agenda, right? You have an agenda to enlarge your campaign, to invite people to join you and contribute their time, energy, and expertise and money and resources to your campaign. That is all, that is an agenda that we all have. But just for the time in your tell a story, get that story told and get it told good, and then reserve for the next moment, for the next conversation. Once you realize that you're successful because of the feedback you're getting from your listener, you can tell they'll be like, wow, I get, oh, they'll just be like, maybe they'll just have their mouth agape. Maybe that's the feedback they're giving you, but that tells you you've succeeded. Or maybe there'll be a tear in their eye. It's okay to feel your feelings, to get present to the emotions you've gone through, and don't be surprised. And when you're successful, that they will be reflecting back to you the same emotions because they're tracking your personal story with you. Take a breath, acknowledge the rapport you've created, and maybe instead, now would you like to hear about our campaign? And make it a permission thing. Okay, now I'd like to tell you some things about what we're doing today and how you can be involved. Would you like to talk about that? Yes. 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 With you, given the story I just heard, yes, I want to talk with you about that. That's how this can be successful. Okay. So anything else you'd like to say about your story, Angela, or about storytelling in general for you and your campaign?
Thanks for the opportunity to practice this, because I do understand just how important it is to get the methodology right.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned a lot from what you've just said. So I'll go back and rewrite that little section in my book before I send it off this week.
Oh, good. Hey, if you want to email me a copy, so I'll proofread it, and I'd be happy to give you feedback. I got to tell you, the book I published in December, Something in the Water, it's wow, what a personal triumph, I have to tell you. Before, I never thought of myself as an author, and I did the International Fluoride-Free Teleconference 48 months in a row without interruption, and interviewing all the people and some multiple times about all the things that were going on over that 4-year period. And it was only later that I said, hey, all this audio material is just, sitting in the library, people, can listen to it, but it needs to be distilled down to it and people can hold it in their hand. And so, yeah, I spent 6 months last year and I involved other people. This is the thing. I had a professional help me, a professional whose service is specifically taking audio podcasts, audio online material, recorded material, and turning it into books. But I've had plenty of people edit it, too. So every edit, it just got better and better and better. So it could surely be very readable, but ultimately practical in that it gives you what you need as a campaigner. So today, I'm really thrilled to have this book. It as a personal achievement, I have to say, I'm very proud of it. And the feedback that I get from people, how inspiring it is. People who, one fellow last week just wrote to tell me that he wants to get involved in fluoridation. He had heard of it, he knew about it, he knew it wasn't good, but after reading my book, now he wants to do something about it. And that is so gratifying because that's exactly the reason I wrote the book. It's not to talk about the intrigue, about the history, how fluoridation came to be. We all know it was a deception, and the Manhattan Project that you referred to and all that. It's interesting as all get out. That's so interesting. And then the science of as well, what it does to our bones, what it does to our teeth, what it does to our pineal glands, where it comes from. All that stuff is very important, but it's all been done by Dr. Conant in the Case Against Fluoridation and by Bryson in the Fluoride Deception, that book. And in my book, I refer to those two as essential reading. But once you understand the history and the science the biology. What are you going to do about it? So I'm preaching to the choir, obviously, because the people here today are campaigners. But my book it exists in order to get people in action, to empower them, so they go from being someone who thinks it's wrong and would be kind of happy if it were done, yeah, but to see themselves as capable of starting a campaign or participating in a campaign to end fluoridation in their local town. That's the goal of the book, and it's working. So I hope your book is a huge success. If there's anything I can do to help in the composition or the publication or the marketing or the promotion of it, please let me know.
Thank you. Thank you. Just the one thing I wanted to add today is that it's my 62nd birthday today. And I have survived 10 years of this brain tumor. And that's due to homeopathy, I have to say, and surgery.
How about a little help from God too, huh?
Oh, absolutely. A big help from God.
You're a miracle, Angela.
Intuitive part of ourselves.
I'm sure there's a reason you're here today for us. And what a gift to have you today, have your time and energy on your birthday. Did you guys want to sing a song? I mean, I don't know.
No.
Don't do it. She says, don't.
No, it's all fine. Thank you.
That would be over the top. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh. All right. This is really working out well because every single story has its own elements, and there's nothing like working together to see how we hear the stories and how it affects us when we're listening to it, and to learn to be conscious of what storytelling can do for your campaign. All right, Janice, so do you want to just tell your story?
I actually have distilled water in my house. There's a couple of reasons if you're having this glass of distilled water that we're having here, because Carissa Clark is my friend, and she challenged me, hey, look at fluoride, it's a neurotoxin. And she was terribly upset that she discovered all these 64 studies that linked fluoride with reducing IQ on children. And so I thought, I'm going to figure this out. And so in 2020, I discovered a study from Sweden that showed women who have gone through menopause have a 50% higher rate of hip fracture, and 30% will die from that fracture in the first year. So I was pretty outraged, since I'm postmenopausal, and I'm like, I don't really think it's right that people should be able to fall and a third of them are going to die. So I actually did contact my water board and everything, and it went through many levels, but people are not really being responsive. I guess older people can be expendable. All they got was there was some sort of data that it might protect teeth, but I'm still not finding that to be something that I can really, it's in question. So I have been trying to get fluoride out of the water. For one thing, it's really bitter. My water is bitter. I grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains with well water and spring water, and it's sweet. And water tainted with fluoride tastes extremely bitter. And so I think for the health of the children in my valley where we live, they should be taken off of fluoride, not lose their IQ. I think women deserve to not be worried whether if they fall, they'll break a hip. And no, I'm vehemently against fluoride at this point. That's it.
All right. All right. So for everyone listening to Janice's story, ask yourself, did you get all three parts? And, which ones did you get, and which one did you really get it? Was it strong, or did you want more about that part? As you listen to people's stories, that's going to help too in seeing the three different elements. So definitely, Janice, I'd say, maybe 80% of what you said was all about the second part. They're all three critical, but that transformational part is really the dramatic part, I guess we could say. For a lot of the stories, it's the plot twist in the middle of the story. So yeah, you you were challenged by a friend. I really like that part because it gives some drama, right? Their character. There, as the listener, I'm like, oh, I can see you and perhaps some friend of yours. And then I picture the guys are sitting in your living room drinking some tea. I like it's. I had a little visualization actually. The one thing you could do to help that, although you rather than relying on the listener to paint the picture, to go ahead and do it for them. So since this challenge by your friend was so pivotal in your personal story, your particular personal story, why not just go ahead and say, so there I was on a Sunday afternoon hanging out with my friend, and we were just drinking tea and talking about a whole bunch of different things. And at one point we ended up talking about fluoridation, which I had, and then you can talk about, the before time, the first element, which I had never really thought about before. I mean, I had heard of it, but so make sure to, that was the part that wasn't so evident in your story. So at some point you want to make sure we get the before time, who Janice was about fluoridation before this particular challenge by your friend. And she said, I challenge you, and like maybe even just recreate the exact words she said. I challenge you to blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, gee, okay, I'll take that challenge. Or maybe you thought, I don't want to take that. It's not interesting to me to say, what your reaction was to that challenge. And apparently it led you to some research and that you researched more things. And as I was saying before, a lot of people need, a lot of your stories will be about how you did your own independent research and what research you specifically came upon that was critical for you to finally go, yeah, this stuff is no good. And then to make the point in your story, if you can, to go ahead and just say it. And as soon as I read that thing about hip fractures, I knew that fluoridation of the water, there's no way that the benefit outweighs the cost, or however you rationalized this breakthrough information for you. So go ahead and just put a pin on it. Like, that was the moment I realized that fluoridation had to stop, or something like that. And then the other part that you want to definitely include in your story is what it's like now. So ever since that day, I've determined that I'm blah, blah, blah. And so I do X and I do Y and I do Z. That simple, that brief, just to make sure that people get it, that now it's integrated into your life. This revelation of yours has now been integrated into your existence today. And that's who you are today and why you do what you do today. So can I ask you, Janice, what it was like before that challenge by your friend?
I have to say I didn't even consider it because I didn't care, really.
There you go. That's simple. And that's authentic, and that's the truth. And it's, by the way, as you know, that's the way it is for a lot of people. So it's really critical that you express that part as innocently and authentically as it was. I didn't think about I hadn't even really thought about it at all. I don't know if I could tell you at the time. I don't know if I could tell you what it was for, or even how to spell it. Right, Richard Sauer-Eber? As an inside joke, Richard is on the line with us. He was part of the original audio, and I use his story in the book because even as a chemistry student, university chemistry student, he was spelling fluoride with F-L-O-U, and that's what got him thinking about it. I love that, by the way. So it's so classic. So we don't know. We're so innocent. We just are the way we are before someone or something comes along and has us focus on it as a thing once and for all, and that breakthrough happens. And we're all here today because, presumably, I'm guessing that happened. I mean, with maybe someone like Dr. Conant's son, Michael Conant, maybe from the day he was born, he was told, fluoride's no good, we have to get it out. From the day if your parents were like fluoride-free activists from the day you were born. Otherwise, we all had that breakthrough moment, and it's so critical that we are able to share that. So, Janice, do you want to? What do you want to do? Do you want to maybe practice your story real quick one more time, or do you have some reflections on what I've said? How do you want to do this now?
So, and try it out, and just write it up the way you described it, and then see what I can do with it. I think making a you are there moment for the beginning, and then taking it into a greater dealing with the fact that it's no longer something that people should be putting up with at the end.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you and everyone. This has just been very helpful. If as a coach and trainer, I can tell you this is going very well. That your examples are wonderful. Your willingness to have feedback and to use the feedback. And then I will again encourage you, after we get off of this meeting today, that you do make a point to practice. And practice and practice and practice. You will get better at it, which of course has its benefits for your campaign. But I promise you'll also just get more in touch with yourself. And every time you tell it, you'll want to tell it because it moves you first and foremost. You're the one who's first moved by your own story. And then naturally other people will be moved by it too. I think we have time for one more. Let's see. Danny, do you think you can keep your story if I set a timer? And you can try this, everybody. Set a timer for, let's say, 2 minutes. Do you think you could keep it under 2 minutes? You could hit all 3 parts in 2 minutes. Danny, I'm raising the bar, obviously, because we're improving.
Can you hear me?
Over the hour. Yes.
Okay. I started. When did we start with ecology? Well, the EPA was formed in 1970, early 70s, and I lived in Modesto, California, and there was the World's Fair, and that World's Fair was in Spokane, Washington, and the whole theme was ecology. So I took my 6-year-old and my 10-year-old and my sister-in-law and my daughter, and we all went in a Volkswagen Bug, and we got books from the library about rocks and seashells, and we went up Highway 1 all the way to Portland. We saw Grandma, but we stopped at beaches like Jade Beach, and we saw purple rocks. Anyway, we got to the fair, and we stayed at Hayden Lake in a cabin for a week, and then we drove into Spokane. But there was nothing about fluoride at that fair. So then we came down the eastern side back down, but that whole theme was ingrained in my head about what ecology was all about. And so when in 2000, when the private organizations, there were the front organizations for the dental associations, they offered $1 million to Modesto, California. They would pay for the equipment, they would pay for everything except the operation. And we had 5 people on the city council, and they had a vote 3-2, not to put it on the ballot, just to start it up, take the $1 million. And we heard about it, and we went down to the meetings every week. You get 5 minutes to talk. They would sit there, they would say nothing. We decided politicians don't respond, so we have to go to the people. So I had just retired. So every day I sat in front of my computer and I evolved in my mind how to get to the people. And I discovered there are ways, instead of just yard signs in front of neighborhoods, we took the yard signs and put them on the down ramps and the up ramps of the roads where the 50,000 commuters every day left town and then came back. And they would see twice these signs as they waited for the light to change. So that way we got 50,000 people instead of just signs in a neighborhood. And then I discovered there's a bridge where chiropractor next to the bridge. He says, I want a big 8-foot sign. Get me one. So I went and had a $90 sign maker. I made a 4x8 sign. We put one there. But he says this bridge next to me, which is the only bridge you could get from one side of the town to the other side, he said 150,000 people go across that bridge. And he says, I want 4 or 5 more signs to put in that bridge. So near the sign. So everybody went, 150,000 people coming and going to see that signs. And well, there's a ton of tactics where you can get to all the people in your town. And the last one I'll tell you is the newspaper. We had in California, there's a law called 218 that says people who have utilities taxes proposed to be increased have to be notified. Well, the problem with that is the city sends out a postcard to all the owners of the apartments, and there are 50, 60,000 people that rent, but they don't see the card because there's only one owner that's listed with the city that pays the water bill, because the apartments usually pay all the water bills. So I took that little postcard 5x8 and I designed it into an entire 1-page newspaper page, not as advertisement. And I put it in there where you could cut it with the scissors and you could mark your thing. And so normally when that card comes in on any kind of utility vote, they get about 200 or 300 returns to the city out of over 125,000 people at that time. So, but they're not all renting, but well, all the people that own homes and all that. So hey, anyway,
Danny, I'm going to interrupt you. I thank you very much for jumping in there, and I'm going to take the opportunity to use your what you offered as an example for everybody. So when we're looking for 3 different elements, so I'm sure you guys heard very clearly the first element, like what it was like before. So in your story, you were very successful in giving us an impression of who you were before time, in the sense that you were an ecologist, as a father, you impressed upon your children the importance of ecology to the degree that you took trips and things like that. That's a wonderful a recreation of what it was like before. But what was missing from your story, I don't know, maybe I missed it, but I did not hear the moment when the events that led you to determine that fluoridation itself, specifically putting fluoride in the water, is not a good thing. I missed that part. I understood that that your city had determined it was going to fluoridate its water and was going to get paid for, but I didn't know if did you have your breakthrough before that time, or was it simply because of that event, that news? Were you reading the paper one day and you said, what is this? And did you already, as you read the news about your city attempting to fluoridate the water, did you already know that fluoridation was no good? Or was it because of that news that had got you started investigating and wondering if fluoridation was a good thing to put in the water in the first place? And to really again warn people not to talk about your campaign, the tactics, the strategies of your campaign. When you're telling your personal story, the goal of your personal story is to get people to know you as a person, and your personal journey from innocence or ignorance through to the breakthrough in understanding and the knowledge that fluoride is no good, and then a brief idea of what it's like being you since you had that breakthrough, those 3 elements. And the temptation, of course, is to talk about strategies and tactics or techniques, or even the science about the fluoridation and what it does to your bones or your brains or your hips. To talk about the conspiracy and the collusion of government. And there's so much to say about fluoridation. We have to be really disciplined. that for you to be able, for you and everyone in your campaign to have this amazing weapon in the arsenal of your campaign. It's called your personal story. You know, you need to be disciplined and not start talking about all the other things that are, you know, very interesting, and eventually you will have an opportunity to talk about. But for the time being, when we're just focusing on telling our personal story, in order to engage others, to humanize it, to personalize it, in order to get them to want to listen to all the other things that to somebody who's new to the ills and the problems of fluoridation, if you want them to listen to all the other stuff, they need to really get who you are personally. Why are you so concerned? Why do you care so much? What's the big deal? Why are you so upset? Why are you so blah, blah, blah? People, if they have a hard time listening to facts and data and strategies and things, because there's this niggling voice in the back of the head saying, why does this person so fill in the blank? Why are they so upset? Why are they so passionate? Why are they so animated? That until that question gets answered, they're not going to be able to listen to you fully. So it's almost like a requisite. It's almost required that you have your personal story and that you get that in place up front. So that's our time for today. I recommend that you all share this video to our next month's event, which will be step 9, publicize government secrets. That'll be next month, the first Saturday of the month for North America and Europe, and Sunday morning down under. So we're going to talk about open records requests and what to do with the results of your open records request. So there's a huge factor in fluoridation because there's so much secrecy behind fluoridation, and there's the collusion between government and the manufacturers and health agencies, and there's a lot of communication and a lot of documents that go back and forth between people in our governments. And fortunately, many of us, if not all of us, have in place legislation in our country, in our states, in our cities and towns that require the government to produce, upon request, public records. The idea is that these records belong to the public. They don't belong to the government. We aren't asking them to see them. We have a right to them. It's just our job to get them. And it can get complicated because there are some stipulations about how they can deny certain records to you under certain circumstances. And sometimes they will, just because they're trying to cover their tracks and what have you. We're going to get all into the details of how to very strategically request public records, how to deal with, again, when they don't comply. And then when you get the results, what to do with them. So you want to publicize them strategically to your community to let people see what's really going on behind the scenes, and that can really enhance your campaign. So please put it on your calendar to be with us next month and invite everyone from your campaign to join us. I thank you very much once again for being with us. All right, everyone, have a great day, and we'll look forward to being together again very soon. Over and out.
Thank
Okay.
you.